The horror story of the Sprunks is getting a sequel. Other Incredibox mods have long since been released, and what comes out of it? New phases of Sprunki become more and more creepy, each one scarier than the previous one. The authors show frightening ingenuity in their nightmarish fantasies. It's no longer enough for them to have a mutilated face, for example. Now they want to tear it up even more and add more and more horrifying details. But it doesn't end there. There are scenes that make your blood run cold. Ugly scars, distorted eyes, strange sounds accompanying every new movement of the Sprunks. With each update, it seems that the limit of horror has been reached, but the authors prove again and again that they can make it even scarier. Of course, this is not canon, but rather an alternate universe. Nevertheless, each version looks like a logical continuation of the original story, as if the events developed either much harsher or took a completely different path. Everything that happened in the original is shown here with even more bleakness and cruelty. There are scenes and characters that are so shocking that they can't be shown. Because of this, the story takes on even more disturbing tones, and the characters themselves become sinister and frightening. Everything is so tough that even the author of the mod himself warns us that there may not be entirely facetious scenes. So what's really there? I have blood in my veins from the anticipation. The mod is called Phase 7. We have already had various phases before, and even in the original game there are at least two. The first phase is a sunny day, birds are singing, there is joy and happiness all around. But when you put on a hat, everything turns into a nightmare where the world is plunged into chaos. The creators of the fashion decided to go even further and present the 7th phase. Now you don't even have to wear anything to be transported into the harsh reality of the Sprunks. In this phase, the Sprunks, who have no appearance of their own, look even more haggard and disfigured, like old shabby dolls. And while the characters in the 2nd phase were still frightened, here things take an even more sinister turn, turning the world into a real horror. Now let's introduce each character in his new form. The first is Oren, who has suffered the most. He is badly disfigured, and now his eyes make sounds like drum beats. Red is also badly damaged, with only scraps of him left, barely retaining his shape. Kluker now makes musical sounds by clicking his jaw, and the Jolly Bot has undergone strange changes. He used to be just sad about losing his master Kluker, but now it's as if he's been reprogrammed to be angry and ruthless. Next is Vineria, of whom only part of her head remains. The rest of her body has been replaced by a plant that grew inside and has now consumed her. This view adds a disturbing nuance. We now have an idea of the sinister way in which her biology may have evolved. Gray, one of the few characters to escape injury, only got away with a scare in the early stages. However, in Phase 7, even he wasn't spared. He's had his share of terror, and now looks different. And Brown suddenly had a skull. Perhaps his bones were strong enough to save him from losing part of his face, and now he too has survived. Outwardly, nothing had changed except his sinister skull, but he began to make sounds that inspired fear. The situation with Harold became even more serious. He was literally crushed from the inside out, and now he resembles even more the very character to whom the original reference was made. Lime has undergone an equally surprising change. He's turned into a tractor. He can't seem to scream anymore, and the only sound he makes now is the nervous tapping of his teeth. And Sky has become completely unrecognizable. He now makes a harsh, annoying sound and has another eye on his face. This suggests that he has literally sold his soul to the devil in exchange for life, becoming a walking curse. His appearance and frightening sounds scream what a monster he has become. But that's not all. Look at the sun. It has undergone strange and ominous changes, as if under the influence of some dark forces. The sun seems to be at the peak of its madness, making the whole place look even more sinister. And finally, there's Durple. He has already finally turned into a demon, the epitome of horror. His appearance completes this gloomy picture, showing how much the world has changed in Phase 7. What happens to the tree? Now we see its true face, previously hidden behind an innocent sign. With the original music, this scene would have looked even creepier. Now to Simon. He's turned into one huge musical mouth that makes ominous sounds. By the way, pay attention to the icons at the bottom. They too change when the characters get their new looks. At first their usual logos are displayed, but then they change to icons showing their transformations. Poor Tanner's been through a lot. According to the icon, not only was he shot, but that wasn't enough for the killer. It seems Tanner was tied up, brutally beaten, literally trampled, and half his head blown off. It looks like he was even tried to drown. It's hard to explain why he's tied up and his mouth is taped shut. Well, let's hear our jolly computer's comments on the matter, for he always has something to say about even the darkest events.
Like to have some fun with us right now. Come on, gossip along with us in this fun time.
Here it is as if two hypostases of Mr. Cheerful Computer are united. In one he is really cheerful and friendly, and in the other he is already gloomy and obviously unhappy with our presence, although he expresses it only in hints. Nevertheless, he still greets us, inviting us to join in and have fun, albeit in a voice reminiscent of an old dying maniac. But even with that tone, he still tries to engage us in his game. Plus, his cheerful smiley face changes too. There's something frightening on his face. Maybe it's a reference to the ghostly image, or just a creepy detail that adds to the atmosphere. Either way, this effect reinforces the duality of the character and gives a strange feeling that something sinister is lurking behind all the cheerfulness. What's going on with our Wenda? The crazy girl who started it all, or at least was one of the main participants. Her life seems to have taken its toll just as much, as if the crimes and craziness she's already done weren't enough. This may explain the mutilated Tanner, as he is the first confirmed victim of Wenda in the original fashion. Oddly enough, we have the source for all this darkness. So Wenda is now even more deranged. Her previous deeds have finally driven her insane and plunged her into complete despair and darkness. Next on the list is Pinky. From the looks of it, the saddest end awaits her here. The author of the mod, of course, does not reveal plot details and does not speak directly about the fate of the characters. But it seems that Pinky is no longer with us, and Jevon seems to have reached his limit in immersing himself in occult rituals. Now he has finally become a cultist. His image has become truly sinister, perhaps exactly as he was intended to be in the original. And then finally, there's Black. He seems to appear here out of the fog, and at the same time, as if I'm not involved, and in general, also aloof. I get the impression that he's just not interested in participating in all this chaos. Maybe this is a hint at the laziness of the author himself, who failed to fully develop his image. It is funny and strange that everything comes to an end exactly on Black, although in fact it is natural. We see how the characters gradually degenerate, becoming more and more gloomy and primitive in their portrayal. So the lack of detail in Black's characterization is a kind of finishing touch to this trend. Of course, there are also mods where character development and transformations are more deeply explained. For example, in the same previous phases, although the 5th phase is almost the same as the 7th, it's still done with a bit more elaboration, which adds a couple of interesting points. Although in this version, the mutated characters sometimes look completely absurd and illogical. What exactly led to their mutation? Were they killed? Turned into monsters? It is not fully known, but there seems to be a real chaos here. Madness for madness' sake? Thrash for thrash's sake? One thing is clear. As the phases change, the characters either degenerate rapidly or take on increasingly creepy traits. There is a mod called Sprunki Infected, and it immediately warns us of the unflattering scenes we are about to see. There is truly a body horror atmosphere here. The author has done a tremendous job adding a lot of details, like moving clouds, which enhances the ominous atmosphere. Especially intriguing is the mysterious character standing behind the terrified Sprunki and silently watching them. When I first noticed him, I even had the feeling that he was about to move, but he remains motionless, only adding to the tension of the scene. Who is he? Definitely not Black, because we see him separately, and even with a familiar hat on his head. Great find by the author. He made an already frightening horror story even darker. I think it turned out great, especially because of the layered references that make the audience think. It would be interesting to hear different theories about who that mysterious observer in the background could be. Which of the mods did you enjoy the most? And which character are you rooting for? Share your opinion in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to not miss new reviews and theories.